I dream for all of us to own wardrobes with garments made from sustainable sources, including fair wages for the makers. I aim to motivate and inspire viewers to see the clothes they wear as an expression of their personality and their beliefs. This is the Slow Wardrobe. Come and have a look. So here we are with 5 new colours of crossweave linen. I am extremely excited about them. They just came in and we currently have them in tabards and smocks, and we're going to see which other garments to extend them into. Tabards and smocks being the most basic garments that we have really. We thought it would be a good place to start. Also, whenever we commission these fabrics, because they're crossweaves, it's a little bit of a hit and miss to see how they're going to come out. We have to kind of guess how those crossweaves are going to work and whether or not or how successful they will be. In this case, we're extremely happy with how they came out. I'm going to show them to you one by one. And any questions, of course, shout, and I'll just babble through different ways that you can wear them and how I think they will work best with your existing layer cakes if you have any already. So starting off, what I'm wearing here is a colour that we've called Moth. And it's a colour that, as you can see from a distance, is kind of a murky, brownish, greenish grey colour. It's difficult to see what colour, or to name actually what colour it would actually be. It's a very exciting crossweave that is achieved by crossing an olive green, a grassy olivey green, with that is close to this actually, with a lilac colour, and that creates this. I'll show you a close-up of the fabric so you can see the lilac and the green both represented close up, and depending on how the light hits it. But the overall impression is quite a grey colour until you come closer and you think, actually, there's a lot more happening in this. I absolutely love that, but it translates really difficult on the screen. I'm wearing it with a pair of baggies in the small check, and the small check fabric is was the starting point for all the fabrics that we've woven to go with. All our fabrics so far have been relatively cool colours, and we felt that there needed to be more warm colours in the range. Of course, the small check, the check fabrics gave us lots of opportunity and lots of colours to play with, because there are no less than 19 colours in the small check fabric, which makes it so colourful that it almost goes with everything again. It almost turns into a neutral, because no matter what colours you hold it against, you go like, ooh, that's very much like this, or that's very much like that. So it kind of goes with everything. So the green and the lilac in here are both colours that are in the baggies, and which is one reason they go so well together. The other 4 colours that are in the range, I've got a couple of them here. This one is apple. It's the brightest and lightest green that we have. And I've already had questions about why we have 2 new greens. It's because we didn't have any left, to be honest. And we wanted to build on the new leaf and the blue leaf colours that we had before, and come up with a really nice bright spring green colour that I think we've achieved really well with this. So I've got high hopes for this colour, and short of going into the direction of chartreuse, which is a very exciting colour but quite difficult to wear for a lot of people, I think this is as close as we're going to get. It's very fresh and it's not too warm, so it can also be worn by people who normally wear cooler colours. So that's the second one, apple. The first one that I already told you about that I was wearing, I don't know whether I mentioned the name, Moth. It's a colour that I think really suits it very, very well because of the dull kind of impression, similar to real moths in real life. When you look at them close up, they turn out to be very colourful animals, but from a distance they just give this grey-brown impression. So there's Moth. Then the next colour is the slightly darker green that we have introduced, more like an olive, which we've called Moss. Again, I think a very appropriate colour. You can see it's more subdued than apple, not quite as bright and quite as fresh, but again, an extremely versatile colour and a very good addition to the range as one of the more basics. Here shown together with one of the dresses in the small check. That's a regular length dress in the small check, and a mini tabard. We're going to do mini tabards in the small checks as well to go over the top of any of these new colored smocks and tabards, and to complement the baggies and the dresses as well, of course. So a dress in a regular length, then a smock, and then a mini tabard in the small check. And now for the other colours, because there's two missing. First up, a colour that we have been asked for a long time. A rust colour. We've called it brick. It's got that same green warp as the other new colours and as the Moth. You wouldn't believe it, but it's the same green, but then mixed with a red colour to create a colour that we've called brick, like I said. And available at the moment in tabards and smocks. I've got a tabard on here, and just by standing with the other colours you can see how well they all go together. And considering that I am not a warm colour wearer, I'm amazed at how nice this colour looks. It doesn't dull my complexion in any way. It somehow works really well, even though it's a warmer colour. And again, wearing it with the baggies still. So that's colour number 4, brick. And then, last but not least, Peacock. What do you think? Same green again, but now mixed with a dark teal blue. And considering how strong the green is, because that's the green, this is the green that is part of it. Considering how strong that green is, I think the mix is really punchy. It really does properly remind of peacock and peacock feathers. And I guess even in this light, out of all 5 of the colours, you can see most clearly how, depending on how the fabric moves, it either looks blue or green. Somebody was saying on social media that it reminded her of Shantung silks. And yes, of course, shot silks are made in exactly the same way, using 2 different colours for warp and weft, and then you get these beautiful in-depth colours. And I guess you call it shot linen in this case. But here we have it. There's number 5. Line up with my girls again. A smock in peacock. So this one is also available in the tabard. Now, moving on. And back again to talk some knitting. If you're wondering what's different about my face, I'm not wearing any makeup. Makeup in my case is mascara and sometimes some lipstick. For the last couple of weeks I haven't been wearing any mascara, and it's one of those things that when you start doing it, you can't seem to stop. Well, I can't seem to stop. I don't know why. I don't really particularly like the look without mascara. I think maybe because of the white hair and your eyelashes going lighter as you get older as well, and eyebrows and whatever, you lose a little bit of definition around your eyes, and then of course a bit of mascara goes a long way. And I think I've got one of those husbands who doesn't care for makeup much and likes it better when you don't wear any. So he professed again a couple of weeks ago how he really dislikes lipstick. So I kind of conveniently forgotten that. So I stopped wearing lipsticks, not particularly, just because of what he said, but I thought, let's stop again for a while. And then stop the mascara as well for no good reason. So I tend to go through these waves anyway, I guess, of wearing more or less. Same with growing nails and wearing nail polish. I've done that a number of times over the years, and for the last year or so I'm seriously into short nails again. So nice when you can just be very grabby with your hands, I guess. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm back here to talk about my knitting and show you the progress compared to a couple of weeks ago, when one of the kicks I was on were the rag socks, pattern and yarn bought from Midwinter Yarns. And I said at the time, I showed you the ones that I made that were initially going to be for my husband and I then kept for myself, and couldn't show you the ones the yarn that I bought for myself and then ended up using to make socks for my husband. But I've actually brought his socks now you'll be able to see that they've been worn, but it's just to show off the color. So it's black and grey and red. And the main thing with these rag socks is that you just knit a one knit, one purl rib for the entire length of the leg. And then you do your heel cuff, turn the heel, do your decreases and knit the foot. And the one rib, especially with this heavier yarn on your leg, makes for, of course, an extremely forgiving sock. So last week when we were again watching some TV, I was on one of my other projects, and I think it was actually me who said, shall we turn the lights off because there were dark scenes and whatever. So we ended up sitting in a dark room again watching the TV, and we're talking 10 o'clock at night is when we watch TV. So I scrambled to get another fat yarn to knit some socks out of, and found a ball of Regia, German brand, in a heavier sock yarn, and started knitting these and decided to do exactly the same thing. So I cast on in the dark, did a nice loose cast on, and then started with a 1-1 rib for the entire leg, and then decreased extra stitches when I realized that with this yarn I was going to get quite a loose sock, which of course I got with these as well, but they kind of slob around the house socks, and these would be nice if they could be worn inside boots or wellies or whatever. So I decreased some extra stitches. So I think I started with 50 and I ended up with 44. So I decreased extra stitches around this heel area and then did the foot on 44 stitches. It's a really nice color. I don't actually know whether this is still a current color. This was just a yarn from my stash that I bought a couple of years ago. I do have the ball band here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Chucked everything that I brought from home, all my projects, in the bag that I brought back from Edinburgh Yarn Fest this spring. Fabulous big size, nice big bucket to just throw lots of project bags in, which is what I was doing. Here's my ball band. It is a Regia Stockholm color, and the colorway is 08996. That's the ball band. And again, like I said, I don't know whether this is still a current yarn. I love how it knits up so very speckled almost. Bear with, I'm going to dig out from my little Woolly Originals bag. Here's the tag that was on this little baggie. I'm not sure this is meant to be. I think it's more like an accessories bag than a project bag, but I find that I can, even with a big ball of yarn, fit an entire sock in with needles and ball. What I wanted to show you really is how the pooling, the Barber pole type effect on this yarn is of the plying, and what you then get when you knit that up. I think it's really cool, the differences. So it's a Barber pole yarn, which is what it's called for those of you who are not familiar with the term. If you ply threads of different color, some of the Andrea Mowry Drea Renee knits are knitted at the moment with a very popular American yarn that is spun and plied like that. So in this case, let me count these. This is an 8 ply, which means, is it 8 or is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8 plies, 8 threads, 4 of each color. And I think it says on the ball band, see just above my finger then, 8 fädig. 8 fädig, or fädig. It's German, of course, but it means that there are 8 ends plied together. And in this case, there are 4 ends of each color. So if you open up the yarn a little bit, you can see all the fine threads, and 4 of each ply together. So it looks like 2 thicker strands that come together. That creates this Barber pole effect. And when you then knit that, those little bits come up as little flecks, which looks highly effective in the finished. So it's this confetti type color effect, which from a distance is really nice. So 1 sock down, second sock is only just on the needles. Like I said, doing this in the dark, including my cast-ons, and then feeling my way around the heel and everything. And I get a perverse pleasure out of the fact that I can pull that off. I wouldn't dare do it with any thinner yarn because I think the effect will be horrendous. But with the thicker yarn, it definitely works on like a 3.5mm needle, I think I'm working on. And one of my sons said, "Oh, I really like that." So they're going to be for him. So that's my first project, and kind of harking back to the rag socks. Now, for the knitting that I'm doing when there's some light around, I think I've already, I don't know whether I've actually shown this on the podcast or only on Instagram, but I am knitting an Astrid by Junko Okamoto, and the base color is the light grey beige, is it grey beige color? I'll put the title underneath properly. In Biche et Bûche. I said Biche et Bouche last time, which wasn't right. It's Biche et Bûche. French brand Le Petit Lamb's Wool. And it's unbelievably soft and lovely to knit with. It softens as you knit. It is a 4-ply yarn. I think it's about 500 meters per 100 grams, if I remember correctly. And my own brand, Soliloquy, is 600 meters per 100 grams. So to try and see whether it would work, knitted a swatch with the Biche et Bûche base color and then color work in Soliloquy. And I loved the effect. I loved it. And it's partially because in some cases, when you work color work, then, and you do it all with the same yarns, then the color work can get a little bit bulky almost and more squishy, because of course you've always got strands running behind, and a lot of people tend to knit their color work slightly tighter, so then they change the needle size for the color work to make sure that their gauge is still the same. Bottom line, I had the feeling that if I would make some of those yarns slightly finer, that it might well work out. And because the Le Petit Lamb's wool is clearly a woolen spun yarn, so it's got a nice squish to it. It's more woolen spun than my own soliloquy. I thought that the squishiness of that base color would almost like fill up any space around the colored stitches that the slightly finer yarn might leave. We're all talking fractions of distance, fractions of space. But I just had a gut feel that it might work. So I did my swatch. It worked a treat. It looked great in my swatch. So I then had to choose my colors, which is not easy when you're doing color work that has quite subtle combinations of color. And Felicity Ford, Knit Sonic, recognized this very usefully so when she wrote her books about color work. And with the second book, the playbook, she actually brought out like an exercise book almost with plain uncolored sheets of the different designs that are in the playbook, so that you could color in those sheets to see how different colors play with each other. Because when you have, I think I actually took a photograph of the colors that I'm using, or actually I can just show the balls, couldn't I? The colors that I chose, so here's my base color. Then for the bigger sections, because this jumper has a bigger pattern that comes back more often, and then it has these more subtle sections. So for the bigger pattern, which in the original sample is a pale pink against a slightly darker brown-grey background, I wanted a little bit more contrast. So I chose this medium grey as the color for my main motif. And then for the others, which have come in much smaller amounts like this, the colors I chose, sorry if you can hear the ticking of my needles on the table. I'm trying to make sure that it's not too loud, because of course it's right next to the microphone. So my other colors for those other motifs are these four, which when you show them together like this, look very, very different, of course, than the way they actually appear in the work. So it's quite a challenge to imagine how this is going to look when it comes back in a very subtle representation in your knitting, because this is how that actually looks knitted up. So you can see that almost neon lime yellow color I've only used at the tips of the motif, because I didn't want that to dominate too much in the sweater. Having said that, there's a little bit more of it down here, but it's going to be relatively little of that coming through. I like the idea that the way it comes up in the knitting is almost like a lemon, like little lemon splashes, which is just nice and fresh, because my other colors are quite dark. Then I've got this dark sage, I guess, or dark olive, that now that I knit it up, ends up looking in my knitting, I think in the finished jumper it'll be different again, but in my knitting ends up looking quite close to the dark grey that I'm using. There's not a lot of contrast yet. I think that once we have more distance of more knitting, it'll actually be better. And then I have the dark red and the raspberry colors. So far so good. I'm really happy with how it's looking at the moment. This, of course, is the top round the neck. And so I'm in the process of knitting the yoke down like this. So I'm really happy with that. And you can see why I've gone for this kind of color, because of course it goes in the direction of my hair. And I like the idea of it's a good color for me to wear. That's something, as an aside, that I can recommend anyone to do. I think the service that I use is called House of Color. Oh my gosh, what a revelation. There are a couple of different companies that do this, like having your colors done. What they actually do if you go there is they put you in front of a mirror with some good natural light shining on your face. So the mirror ends up being close to a window. And they stand behind you and they have all these different colored fabrics. They're like shawls or scarves or whatever. And they put these swathes of fabric around your shoulders, and you end up looking not really at those colors, but you end up looking what happens to your face and your complexion and your eyes and how you respond to those different colors. And the differences are enormous. The differences are unbelievable. So if you are surrounded by colors that are good for your complexion, that work with your complexion and your hair, etc., and your eye color, and then you look like you've just been on holiday. You look healthy, you look really good, there's color in your face, your eyes sparkle, everything looks great. Whether or not you are wearing any makeup doesn't make that much of a difference. If you're wearing the wrong colors, then you look like either you've just recovered from a plane crash or an illness, or you're about to go down with something serious, but you end up looking wiped out. You end up looking tired, all the lines in your face look 10 times worse. You think, oh my gosh, and I'm getting so old and all of that. When you're wearing the right colors, there's none of that really. Now, discovering which colors are good for you are one thing, but how those colors actually match up with what your favorites are can be something completely different. In my case, and some of you may have heard this story, one of my best colors is shocking pink. We're talking Brighton rock pink. It can't be loud enough. And I probably do I have some of it? Any of it here? It's actually difficult to find pinks that are loud enough to highlight the best color. Actually, my shoes are probably best at the moment. I'll lift one of my feet to show you the brightness that I'm talking about. Shocking pink. We're talking shocking pink. So with not wearing any makeup, if I would put some shocking pink lipstick on, nothing else, it would immediately be like, wow, have you just been on holiday, or did you just go to the hairdressers or whatever? People ask you lots of questions because it's the right color for you. It's incredible. Anyway, I completely digress. If you are ever in a position, if you can afford it, or if you can manage to put some money aside for it, very, very worth it to have your colors done. In my case, I am a winter, because it puts you in a season. There's 2 warm seasons, spring and autumn, and 2 cool seasons, summer and winter. And winter is the coldest season in terms of colors. So I'm a winter, and then you can be anywhere on the spectrum in the winter, from light to dark. So Andrea, for example, who you may have met at the shows, who makes Layercake, produces the Layercake, makes the garments. She is a sultry winter. That's a very dark winter. I am what's called a sprinter winter. I'm on the light side of the spectrum. So primary colors, big contrasts are our kind of thing. Jewel tones, bright jewel tones. In her case, darker. In my case, lighter. So silver is cold, is better. Grays are good. If I go into this the pink, I can go to the very bright jewelry pink, but because I'm a sprinter winter, I can also go to the very pale kind of pastel pink. Icy colors are good as well. So diamonds are great too. Who knew? I'm happy. So anyway, back to the Astrid. Very happy with my progress, and I'll keep you posted. This is a project that I would give masses of time to if I had it, but the reality is that it kind of ends up coming third in the line of projects that I work on, because project number 1 is a new design that I'm working on. Project number 2 ends up being the socks knitting in the dark, and if none of the above, then I work on Astrid. So she's not getting enough love in my opinion, but there you have it. Third project, not in terms of importance, but in terms of showing you, is the design that I'm working on in the multicolored linen. I'll just show you a close-up of how the colors are progressing. There we go. Gives you an idea of how they're playing together. Very happy with the progress so far and how it's looking. More to be revealed later. I was of course hoping to have finished this in time for Woolfest. Well, I should be so lucky. I don't think I'm going to make it. It's because it's very slow progress, although it is speeding up because I am narrowing the knitting as I go. But I don't know whether it's going to need any form of border or anything yet. Because of what I'm knitting and how I'm knitting it, it's a little bit difficult to predict how the edges are going to behave. Because this is the first time that I'm using this stitch while knitting linen. So I also don't know exactly how it's going to block out. So I'm planning to knit following the shape that I've designed, and then block it and then see whether I need any more work on the edges. So although I was keen to have it in time for Woolfest, it's probably more going to be Fibre East, if that. Fingers crossed. So that's my knitting. No more finished objects to show you in terms of knitting. That's it for now, and more progress next time. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is holiday wardrobes. Holiday wardrobes in general are really a little capsule wardrobe, because you're literally bringing everything to suffice for a set period of time. And when people say, well, how do you pack for a holiday? I thought I'd share with you the system that I use. First of all, I select clothes that can be interchanged, very much along the lines of what I always do and what I always talk about with you with regards to Layercake. So different tops and different bottoms and dresses, etc., that kind of go together, that can be interchanged. Then from those garments, I put 4 outfits together. So 4 outfits, 4 complete outfits, that is the only thing that I will ever take on holiday. Never more, never less. If you say somewhere for a week and you have a wardrobe with you, a capsule wardrobe with you that has 4 basic outfits with the option to interchange some garments, then you are never going to wear every garment more than twice, unless you choose to. So 4 wardrobes is enough to keep you going for a week. And basically, if you go somewhere for more than 1 week, chances are that there are going to be possibilities and opportunities for you to either have your clothes washed or wash them yourself, even if you just give them a quick rinse and hang them on a line. So for holidays and trips that are more than a week, same thing still applies. You still only need those 4 basic outfits with the option of interchanging garments between them so that you can make different combinations and multiply the different combinations of those 4 outfits along the different days. But those same 4 outfits, provided that you can wash the garments that make them up, will last you for a lot more than a week. As a result of that, it's been possible for me most of the times that I've gone away to only bring a small suitcase. 4 outfits, unless it's the dead of winter and you need more shoes and things like that. But especially in summer, 4 outfits will fit into a relatively small suitcase. So unless you want a lot of extra suitcase space because you're bringing more things back, then a small suitcase is enough. And in that respect, another tip, if you bring a small suitcase of clothes and you think that you're going to bring a lot more back, then put that small suitcase inside a slightly bigger one. And that way you have 1 piece of luggage on the way there, and then you can separate them and have 2 pieces of luggage, that the second of which you're going to fill maybe with wool, who knows, or clothes or other souvenirs. Then you can bring 2 suitcases back and use the extra space that way, whether it's only a week or longer. 4 complete outfits of garments that can be interchanged is all you're going to need. See how you get on and let me know. So that was it for this episode. I've come back on screen really to show you the difference of a little bit of mascara. I actually ended up just thinking, why don't I ask my husband what he thinks of mascara? And explained about, loss of definition in your face. He said, yeah, I think, well, you're pretty with and without, but I see your point about the mascara and it does make a difference. So that snapped me kind of out of it. I've started wearing mascara again. Immediately got a compliment from my daughter. So it does make a difference, and this is the difference it makes on screen. I've also got a little bit of lipstick on, but it's a lipstick from a little pot that you put on with your finger rather than straight from a lipstick, and as a result you end up putting a lot less on your lips, so it ends up all a bit more subtle, which I quite like. But again, that the whole point about the definition, it's definitely there. So yeah, I think back to wearing mascara and back into my comfort zone. So thank you very much for watching. Oh, before I go, one last thing to show you. Those of you familiar with my yarns may have already seen it behind me. I've changed the labels on my yarns. You may remember, let me see if I've got any. I think I've got a couple hanging around still that need labeling. Yeah. I always had these little tags hanging off the yarns with the details on the back. And then at Edinburgh Yarn Fest, when I was sharing the stand with Sharon from 5 Moons, she set up all her racks of yarn, and it all looked so much neater than mine did. And she said, oh, do you want me to sort out the colours for you? I said, yes, please. And that did help, but it still didn't look as nice. Then I realized it was the little hang tags that kind of get scattered all across the different hangs and across the yarns, end up looking quite messy. And the cuffs that Sharon had around her 5 Moons yarns all look really nice. It creates these horizontal lines, as you can see on the rack behind me. So I was out of the tags anyway. They needed to be reordered, and I decided to change them to cuffs. So we've just relabeled everything in time for Woolfest. Information about the yarn on the back, so it's all there, and some information on the back of the cuff as well when you tear it off. It's all about free patterns available on my website. So there we go, nice new cuffs. I'm really pleased with them. But anyway, that was a little digress. Thank you very much for watching. I'll try and come back again as soon as I can. I try and make promises which I then can't keep, so I won't do that anymore. Let me know what you think of this episode. Any questions, feel free to ask. Any requests, feel free to make them. And I hope I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.